Welcome back, boys and girls. Today we're going to listen to Chapter 8, A Dance Upon the Meadow. Poppy and Aerith continued traveling west. Though there were many trails from which to choose, there was no clear signs to follow. The best that Poppy could do was to keep them moving in a westerly direction. For Aerith, it was a point of pride to refuse to ask directions from anyone. But why? Poppy wanted to know. Ask for directions and you're admitting you're helpless, the porcupine pronounced. The only thing that matters is that I know my way back home. When they did meet other mice, voles, a badger, once a deer and her fawn, it was Poppy who asked for advice. We're looking for the brook, she would say. Do you have any idea where that might be? The other animals were more than obliging. When these fellow travelers knew where a brook was, they explained how to reach it. And Poppy and Aerith did find them, 1 or 2 large brooks, some 3 of smaller size, but no golden mice were found. Aerith, Poppy finally said, we don't seem to be getting any closer to where Ragweed and his family lived. Do you think he might have been confused about which way he came? Probably, Aerith grumbled. I admit, Poppy confessed, I'm beginning to wonder how much longer we should go on. Aerith came to a quick stop. Fine, he said. Let's go home. The anxiety in his voice caused Poppy to consider him thoughtfully. You've been awfully quiet lately, she said. Is something bothering you? Oh, sparrow spit, Aerith barked. Can't a fellow keep his thoughts to himself? Of course he can. Look here, Poppy, the porcupine said. I'm not used to being with others. How many times do I have to say it? I like being alone. That's fine, the mouse returned. I was just wondering. Well, stop wondering, Puzzball. But the forest does seem to be thinning, Poppy pointed out. Maybe we are closer to those woodlands. Aerith looked about. I prefer the dark, he said. Poppy sighed. I'm going on a bit more. Do what you want, Aerith growled. By midday, with the trees thinning more and more and the sun beating down hard, it became too hot to travel. Aerith announced he needed a nap. Without even waiting for Poppy to reply, he rattled off the trail, found a shady spot in a tree, curled up in a ball and went to sleep. Poppy rolled over on her stomach, plucked a blade of grass and chewed it meditatively. Before her spread a small meadow surrounded on 3 sides by trees. It had a closed-in, secure feeling. The grasses were low, sprinkled about with flowers. She noticed yellow viola, forget-me-nots, and bluebells. There was a scarlet false mallow and some lovely lush poppies. A black and orange butterfly came into view, fluttering its wings like a slow-motion dancer. Soon after, a fat bumblebee, legs bulging with golden pollen, worked its way from flower to flower. A fast dancer, Poppy thought. As Poppy looked on, something stirred within her. To her surprise, she felt lonely and empty, yet full and content all at once. How, she wondered, could she feel such contradictions? Then, as she watched a dragonfly dart by, she recalled that it had been a long time since she had danced. When she was young, a few months ago, she had thought a great deal about dancing. She even had wanted to be a dancer. Sighing, she recollected that she never had danced with Ragweed. Then they had meant to. Now she felt the desire to dance again. With a nervous glance up to Erith to make sure he was still asleep, she got to her feet. Poppy checked a second time to make sure her friend was asleep. She was in no mood to deal with the porcupine's teasing. When he didn't stir, she lifted her front paws as if to pluck the sun from the sky. Her tail began to wave to a steady beat. A miniature melody, halfway between a whistle and a hum, rose to her throat. It was no particular tune, just something she made up then and there. She took one step and another, gliding forward, pretending, wanting to be as graceful as possible. With every step, her heart seemed to lighten. Within moments, Poppy was leaping about, skimming the surface of the field, bending and bowing, twirling and whirling, hardly thinking, aware mostly of the sun's warmth that caressed her fur and the cool grasses that tickled her toes. Oh, how she loved to dance. Oh, how she loved life. Almost overwhelmed with emotion, Poppy closed her eyes, spun, dipped and danced some more. Then she opened her eyes. Standing before her was a mouse. Poppy gasped. For one indescribable moment, she thought it was ragweed. And here's a picture. We know it can't be ragweed, so who do you think it might be? The mouse before her had the same orange-colored fur. His whiskers were fair. His tail was not very long. His ears were small and round. She almost cried ragweed, but could not find tongue to do it. Then she noticed a small notch on the mouse's right ear. This was not ragweed. Even so, she stood there, transfixed, staring, heart pounding as fast as hummingbirds' wings. For his part, the strange mouse stood absolutely still, gazing at Poppy as if in rhapsody. When Poppy had opened her eyes, she had seen in the midst of a twirl, arms and paws extended before her, legs behind. As she gawked at this mouse before her, she dared not move. Now the strange mouse extended his paws. Without a word, he gently took Poppy's paws in his. At his touch, Poppy felt a tingle ripple through her body. It was as if a feather had stroked her from tail to her nose. For a moment that felt like an eternity, the two mice looked into each other's eyes. He whispered, "May I dance with you?" In answer, Poppy made the first move. It was not a movement away or a retreat, but a small step to one side. His paws in hers, the two mice moved in perfect rhythm. Round and paw in paw, they danced upon the meadow. Eyes locked, whiskers sometimes brushing, they turned this way, that way, bobbing, bowing, soaring in a graceful way as a duet as two mice ever had danced, could dance, or would dance. How much Poppy wanted to ask, "Who are you? What are you? And where do you come from?" She could not. She had no voice or words capable of expressing what she felt. She only knew nothing bad was happening. Indeed, it was just the opposite. Something very fine was occurring, something grand, something wonderful. Suddenly, Poppy slipped. Her paws jerked away from the stranger's paws, and she fell back. The two mice continued to stare at one another. The other mouse blushed, turned, and fled toward the west, disappearing among the trees that surrounded the field. A speechless Poppy stared after him, even as her questions returned. Who are you? What are you? And where do you come from? Where are you going? But the other mouse was gone. Poppy had no answers. And here is the two of them dancing. Overwhelmed, Poppy picked herself up from the ground. Half walking, half staggering, she made her way back to where Erith had remained asleep. At the base of the tree, she sat down and closed her eyes. Had it all been a dream? Or did something truly extraordinary happen? She was not sure. The next thing Poppy felt was her shoulder being rudely shaken. Simultaneously, she heard Erith splatter into her ear. Let's go, Stinkfoot. The sooner we get to where we're going, the sooner we can get back home. But what had happened to Rye? For it was Rye that Poppy had danced with. He had gone from the meadow in a stupor equal to Poppy's. As he went, he paused now and again to look back longingly. Who are you? What are you? He asked the image of Poppy. What is your name? Where do you come from? Where will you go? And why did he feel he had to go away, when in fact he wanted to go back and dance forever? Rye also asked himself if the dance had been real or only a moment's fantasy. So intent was he upon these questions that he completely forgot he was running away from home. When he did remember, he had already reached the entryway to the family nest under the boulder. Oh well, Rye said dreamily, I might as well stay. No one had noticed he had gone. And that's the end of chapter 8.